Rebecca from ChemKnits, and happy Valentine's Day! Today we are going to dye a fun speckled Valentine's Day colorway, and I thought it was fitting to let Valentine blush be the star. Now I picked two other pinks to go along with the Valentine blush, Pink Orchid and Flamingo Pink. And I picked these while looking at my swatch of all my pink acid dyes, and I think that the differences between the Flamingo and Valentine are going to be pretty subtle. The Pink Orchid will be a bit brighter, but the three of these should work really nicely together. So our pinks are the main colors, but I also wanted to bring in something that would have a little bit more contrast, but actually still bring in more pinkish notes. And that is Delphinium blue. So I'm actually going to mix the Delphinium blue dye with some citric acid powder so we can get some finer speckles in this color and more spread out speckles with our pinks. At least that's the plan. Some of you pre-ordered this as a mystery colorway, and I hope that you're really excited to see how it turned out. And I'm going to show off the Valentine that I made and the other extras at the end of the video. If you missed out on the mystery pre-order, I am going to be offering this colorway as a dyed-to-order listing that is now available in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. At the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit more about the dyed-to-order listing, and I'm excited to share that we're gonna have a little treat yourself sale with some coupons to buy more, save more, but I'll share more information about that at the end of the video. We're gonna dye a lot of different yarn bases in this colorway, but to prototype things, in case I wanna make some changes, we're gonna start off on 3 skeins. But first, I'm adding some water that was a mixture of 8 cups of water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. And we have 300 grams of yarn here. We'll see how much we end up wanting. Maybe I used around 6 cups of the mixture so far, but I think I'm gonna actually use all 8. Yeah, this is gonna give us a good squish, and it will mean that when we start heating things up, then it won't get too hot and we're not going to worry about anything burning. There's plenty of liquid in here. But as needed, I will add in more water that has the same ratio of vinegar to water. 8 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. For the prototyping, I have 3 different yarn bases that are all similar but different. We have Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn that is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. Stroll Glimmer, which is 70% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and 5% silver Stellina. And then we have Wool to Dye For's That Yak Sock, which is 70% superwash merino wool, 20% yak, 10% nylon. All 3 of these bases will absorb the dye in a very similar way, except for the fact that the yak, since it's so dark, it's sometimes hard to see when you're dyeing it what the colors look like, and it's a lot easier to then see that when it's dry. So in future batches I'll probably have like 3 of the same kinds of skeins, except for I guess one example that I'll show after this first batch. But anyway, let's go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can get ready to start dyeing the yarn, and I'll start heating things up. And in this plastic container, I added 2 teaspoons of citric acid powder, and I'm coming in with a pretty large heap of our Delphinium blue. Actually, maybe we'll do 2 of those. If I need to, I can always add more dye or more citric acid. Now, when you have the acid dyes with citric acid, you basically are coating the crystals with the fino dye powder, and this will allow us to get sharper speckles with these colors. But it also dilutes the dye so you can add less of it a little more easily. And so when we first speckle, we'll decide if we need to add more or less or what in here. But whenever I'm not using it, I will keep this container covered. I do have a yarn mop on hand. This is another skein of stroll that I pre-soaked in water with acid, and I'll be wiping my gloved fingertips onto it during the course of this video. We're starting to get steamy, and I'm going to reduce the heat to low so that way I don't collect very much moisture on my fingertips. And let's start adding some of the Valentine blush. You'll notice that I'm going for like larger, more defined little splotches. versus going for super fine speckles here. There will be some finer speckles, but I wanted to start off like that. I plan to use the most of the Valentine blush, but I did want to check in on these other colors that I've picked to make sure that they do feel very different before we finalize the way the colors are going to be. The differences, they may not show up as well right here, right now, because I've kind of mixed them up a little bit. But we'll give it a minute and see. Here is some pink orchid. Okay, the pink orchid definitely feels bluer than our other colors. But let me show you from the yarn mop. Because here we have pink orchid, Valentine blush, and flamingo pink. They are very different pinks, but you can see how this also looks very, very subtle. And so I'm going kind of intentionally for something super subtle. We'll see how it works. The flamingo is a little bit yellower than the Valentine blush. Both of these colors are very, very pink, but aren't necessarily the brightest. The pink orchid brings in some more brightness. So again, I don't know if I'll be able to pick out all the differences in the end, but I do feel the differences in here, which is going to add a tiny bit more dimension to our colorway. Okay, let's carry on. I suppose I can go across and do like a little, I can do more like lines to kind of organize myself, but then also some dots. I guess that's not much of a problem, and it's okay to layer these colors together. I'm trying, you know, it doesn't matter if we have every single color on every strand, but I want to make sure that we get decent coverage. We may not end up with a lot of white left behind. It's possible that some of these colors as we go and flip will spread a bit. This is our flamingo pink. It's possible that these colors might spread out, and so therefore we may end up with a bit of a pink base, but I am okay with that. Definitely am okay with that. Okay. Now, of all these colors, the pink orchid is the one that I know the best. I know that it strikes really, really fast. And so that's just something that I'm aware of. And I'm using a little bit less of it, I think, than some of the other colors. But you can see we've got some larger specks and some more spread out little specks on here as well. In particular, you can see some smaller speckles in there, and that's all good and all okay. But I think I will start doing more sort of like lines and zigzags and then spot add after that, just to help get a little bit better coverage. But now I'm going to come in with our Delphinium blue that's mixed with the citric acid powder. And the thing about this that's super fun is that Delphinium blue breaks. It breaks into like blue and pink. So we should, although mixed with citric acid, I don't know, but we should see some of both of that. Right now I just see the blue. I contemplated using a navy, but I really wanted to do something else. I'm not sure if I see any of the breaking in here at the moment. But these are adding some much smaller speckles that honestly aren't that dark on top of everything. I have no idea how it's showing up on the yak. But there we go. Huh, I wonder if all the purple is sticking to my hand, because I went and wiped my gloves and it seemed very purple on the yarn mop. Well, let me zoom you in so you can see those speckles a little bit better. You can see how much smaller and sharper they are. It might be hard to say if I'm going to see breaking with it, just because there is a lot of other pink here, so it'd be hard to say for sure. I'm going to think on this, but I'm going to turn the heat back up to like a medium level, let the yarn sit for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back, flip it to dye the other side. Oh shoot, it just occurred to me that I'm doing something that I normally try to avoid, and that's using citric acid with yarn that has Stellina. I did a video once where I boiled yarn with Stellina in it for a long time and found that a lot of citric acid definitely makes the Stellina go clear. A little bit maybe is okay, but really in general, normally if I'm going to speckle onto something with Stellina, I recommend using like sugar to dilute the dye instead. So we'll just have to see what happens here. Oh dear. A little nervous, but I mean, the worst thing that happens is that we dull it, and that is what it is. And with the Delphinium blue not necessarily breaking here, I have found in the past that when I've tried to mix speckles that I thought might break to mix with different pigments, sometimes the pigments kind of stick to the same citric acid crystal, and so then they don't separate as much. But yeah, I think maybe when we flip, we'll do just some Delphinium blue just to see what we have going on there before we move on to the other colors. Okay, you know what? I'm editing the color a bit. I'm going to add some Twilight Gray to the Delphinium blue. So it's probably 2 parts Delphinium blue, 1 part Twilight Gray. This is going to deepen the overall color a bit. Twilight Gray also can break. And so, yeah, we'll go see, even though we've still got a minute left on our timer. Actually, we'll flip and then add it. We'll go ahead and do that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and flip the yarn. As I did that, I did see some pinks. Whoa! Was that pink spread just from me doing that? What? That was a fair amount of some pink spread there. That's okay. Yeah, I guess it came from... I'll have to look at the tape to be like, was that there all along, or did that come from when I squeezed it out? Again, I said I'm fine with some pink spread, and honestly, I think that'll probably help some of those blues a bit, but let's bring over the new mixture of the finer speckles. Normally I would do this second, but I want to see a little bit what we're working with. And so for this side, we're just going to start with it here. And I'm doing a little bit just all over. There we go. Okay, and I definitely do see some more breaking in here now. In addition to the fine, more blue specks, I do see some notes of pink in there as well, which is, I think, nice. It helps. But the blue tone that we're seeing is very similar to what we had before, so I think overall this is good, and it works. I started speckling on the Valentine blush and Flamingo pink more in lines to just make sure that I'm distributing it well overall, and that just, I don't know, makes it a little bit easier. And then when I brought in the pink Orchid, I did more spot placement of that, sort of randomly dispersing these 3 colors together. When I added the colors in the lines, I really could feel the different hues a little bit more. Again, it is very, very subtle, but I really love the way that it's pulling together, and I'm appreciating those pops of blue more now. I waited 10 minutes before flipping the yarn, trying to expose the middle of the skeins a little bit more, and focused on adding color where I thought we might need more of it overall. As needed, I did bring over more of the water with vinegar that I mentioned at the beginning to just add around the edges to make sure that things would stay nice and hydrated. Once I was satisfied with the color coverage, and note that the pinks were spreading out nicely, I heated the yarn for 30 minutes after the last time I added dye, and then I turned off the heat, removed the yarn, and let it cool completely before we would wash it. All right, it has been, ooh, interesting. I'm seeing a little bit of some like yellows from that Twilight Gray speckle. Oh, that is not something I really considered, but it's in there, and so that is what it is. I forgot that there's that in there. But you know what? I don't think that it detracts from the yarn. I'm now removing the yarn, and the good news is I'll show this again in a second. I'm still seeing sparkle in our Stellina, so that is good. Hopefully we use such a tiny amount of speckles that it's not a problem. And as for that yak, I wonder, I definitely see some of the blue speckles on here, but I wonder how subtle things will feel once it's dry. But there, you can definitely see that silver Stellina still in there. And I think even in this light, can you see the shimmer? I mean, in person I can, but you definitely still see those sparkle fibers. And there's one of those rogue yellow speckles. Oh well. But anyway, I'm gonna let everything cool completely and then we can wash it. I love the blue speckles even more when the pinks spread out a lot. And so I was excited to play around with this some more, but with a different fiber type. In this next pan that I'm showing, I'm dyeing Knit Picks Gloss DK and Fingering Weight yarn. This yarn is 70% merino wool, non-superwash, 30% silk. And I'm dyeing it in a very similar way, understanding two things. One, the colors are going to spread a little bit more. Silk blends, especially non-superwash yarn, require more time for the colors to absorb. But also the colors will end up feeling more muted overall because silk fibers, I think, get a lot more translucent when they're wet and more opaque once they dry. And so if you're dealing with 100% silk and 100% wool, you need more dye to make the silk feel the same color. But anyway, I continued using the same technique, layering on our 3 pinks and then our Delphinium blue Twilight Gray mixture with citric acid. I waited about 10 minutes in between each flips, like I did with the other yarn, and then once I was satisfied with the coverage, I let everything heat for 30 minutes. It's the end of the first dyeing day, and I have not applied any heat to the yarn mops yet. But I do think a lot of the color has already struck to them. Here I am adding them to a dye bath, and I'm seeing a little bit of color come off, but I'm not seeing a ton of color come off. This is a leftover dye bath from some of our speckles. And I'm now going to turn the heat back on. We're going to heat this for 30 minutes and then wash it off camera. But yeah, so you can see that there are some spots where some of the colors are spreading a little bit. So there we go. We're going to wash our yarn, but one thing I've been doing with my zip ties after speckles is moving them before going to wash, because I think some of the bleeding issues that I've had and observed in some of my other videos is because there may have been a little dye trapped around here. So maybe moving it might help dissolve any undissolved color and things like that. But I'm still seeing our silver Stellina. It's possible because we used so little citric acid powder overall for so ultimately few speckles that we could be totally okay. But I'm going to add a little bit of some dish soap and fill this up. Okay, and let's see if we're seeing any color bleeding, but I think we're pretty good. Ooh, this is so cute. Ultimately, it's fairly subtle, but you can see that we do have patches that are more white, patches in the background that are more pink, depending on where that yarn was located in the dyeing process. But now I am going to finish rinsing out the soap. I'm going to put the yarn through my spin dryer, hang it to dry, and we'll take a look at the finished yarn. Here is the first round of prototypes that I dyed. And I'm so happy to say that this yarn is still super, super sparkly with our Stellina. It might be a little hard to show because the light is pretty even in here, but I see tons of sparkles in person. I think it helped that overall we used so little of our citric acid speckles, so there really wasn't enough to damage our Stellina. But in general, I do recommend caution when you are going to use yarn with Stellina. I would recommend, again, mixing the dyes with sugar instead of citric acid. The blue speckles do show up on our yak yarn. The differences between the 3 pinks are pretty subtle, but I still think that the yarn is gorgeous. Here are 2 of our non-superwash silk blends. We have the Gloss DK and Gloss Fingering. And while the speckles aren't as pronounced as they are on a superwash yarn, they definitely still feel speckled. It's just a lot more subtle. Now, as this can happen when I'm speckling yarn. Some of the batches after the prototype were a little bit more exuberant with the colors, and I definitely added a little more dye. But this can happen, especially when I'm dyeing on separate days. When I split up the dyeing, then I am more likely to potentially go a little bit heavier or a little lighter. Of course, there have been examples when I've gone heavier and heavier over the course of one day as well. But when I'm doing something like this that doesn't really have any kind of measurement, it is a lot more likely for there to be some kind of dye lot difference. Finally, we have our yarn mops. They're both very similar to the speckled yarn that we have nearby, but overall the color patches on the mops are much softer, more spread out, and you especially notice this with the blue. The blue is more visible from a distance in all of our mops because the patches are a little bigger. Looking at them all twisted up, the mops are very similar to our speckled yarn. But if you were to combine them in some kind of fade, they would blend together really well and you would see more of the difference because of just the way that the colors are blended together, the way the color patches are larger, and then they get smaller, and overall there's less pigment even on some of the more pigmented skeins. And here's not all, but a lot of the yarn that I dyed for Valentine's Day 2023. I just love how these speckles are really happy and vibrant pink. And then there's those little bitty pops of blue, which contrast with the pinks so well. For me, Valentine's Day is all about love and friendship and showing people in your life that you care about them. And it's also an opportunity to treat yourself. So as I promised at the beginning of the video, I am having a treat yourself sale with coupon codes in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. From today, February 14th, 2023 through Monday, February 20th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. You can buy more to save more in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop with the following 3 coupon codes. You can use the code TREATYOURSELF50 to save $5 off of a $50 or more order. You can use the code TREATYOURSELF100 to save $15 off of a $100 or more order. And finally, you can use the code TREATYOURSELF150 to save $30 off of a $150 purchase. In my Etsy shop, you can only use 1 coupon code for purchase, and you need to use it at checkout. These codes can't be applied to past orders. And again, these are good through February 20th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And they work on everything in my shop, including digital downloads like some of the patterns I have listed. Now let's talk dye to order. I am gonna do a limited run of the Valentine's Day colorway. So that way, if you didn't pre-order one, or if you want more, or maybe on a different base, you can order some. And the coupon codes I just mentioned do work on this listing as well. The dye to order listing will be available in my shop through the end of Monday, February 20th, 2023. And then I'll take the listing down and start dyeing to order this yarn. Now, as I mentioned, there will likely be some dye lot differences. I originally dyed all of this yarn about a month ago, and so when you're dyeing by feel, sometimes it can be a little more exuberant, and so it'll be approximately like this. There are multiple yarn bases available for the dye to order listing, and if the one you wanted is out of stock, please send me a message. Some yarn bases are more limited based on the stock I have on hand, but I will be, I guess, shifting the availability of some of the ones I have a lot more of if needed. So hopefully that's not too complicated. I want to give another huge thank you to everyone who pre-ordered the Valentine's Day yarn when it was a mystery colorway. And along with that came, I think, my favorite ChemKnits Valentine I've ever created. This fun heart sheep. It has this holographic paper on the backdrop that shows through with the hearts. I am super excited about it. Now, this as a concept was not my original concept. I think I found it as like a tutorial for making a kid's craft that you could do with cutouts, but I had a lot of fun in Cricut, like designing my own version, sort of drawing this with shapes and then creating the layers so that way I could make it into a card. I am really proud of it. The mystery bundles also included a sticker, this darling yarn heart that you may recognize as one of the ChemKnits emotes that are available to members of the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. Along with membership, you get badges next to your name, and you can use some fun ChemKnits themed emotes. And so this heart is one of them, and I adore it. It's in my Broken Violet colorway, and I'm happy to have it as a sticker. And this sticker is also now available in the shop. So if you don't have one and want one, you can grab one. Finally, I always like to have a little progress keeper when I do mystery things. We have this rainbow sort of like crystally heart. And it's similar. Last year we did a like lavender one. This one is more deeper rainbow. And it's just cute and fun. And so it's a nice little like sparkle to add to your knitting. I love fun progress keepers because they always make me smile when they come around and around again when I'm making something. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this Valentine's Day tradition. I think this is the 3rd year I've done this, and it's fun to just add like a little bit of love, because I know sometimes when you're a person who likes to make Valentines and stuff for other people and you give a lot, sometimes, now my family is good because I ask them to make me Valentines, but sometimes you want to make sure that you receive something in return. And so that's why some mystery like this is fun. And I really hope that with this package, if you ordered it, that you felt like the big virtual hug from me to you. Oh yeah, but if you love the Valentine I made and are sad that this isn't available anymore, there's a sticker with the design. I went for a pinker heart here, but it is also holographic, and it's just a mini version of this sheep. And I'm really proud of myself for doing this. I don't consider myself much of like a graphic artist, and so I'm really, really proud. I did also update the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop with other yarn colorways, so there's some new listings that you should go ahead and check out. I'll have a link to everything down in the video description. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, do all those YouTube-y things. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to wish all of you a very happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much for watching.